In Meridian Gulch, Montana, most folks thought Kierith "Kit" Ryker had surrendered to fate when a high-stakes FBI raid left him wheelchair-bound. They saw only a shadow of the legendary tactical commander, silently conducting his nightly routine at Tannhauser's Outpost and Fuel. But the desperate band of robbers who targeted the secluded gas station that winter night had no idea they were about to cross paths with one of the most brilliant criminal profilers in FBI history, a man who had spent 2 decades hunting down the country's most dangerous fugitives. What began as a simple armed robbery would unravel a web of corruption that would shake the foundations of Meridian Gulch and prove that the most dangerous predator is the one everyone underestimates. If you're enjoying these real-life stories of unexpected heroes, make sure to hit subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Tomorrow's episode will leave you absolutely speechless. The bitter Montana wind howled across the empty parking lot of Tannhauser's Outpost and Fuel, driving crystalline snow against the weathered windows. Inside, Kierith Ryker's weathered hands gripped his wheelchair's rims with practiced precision as he navigated toward his usual spot. The digital clock above the coffee counter read 11:30 p.m., exactly as it had every night for the past 2 years. Vesper Tannhauser looked up from her inventory sheets, her silver hair catching the fluorescent light. "Right on schedule, Kit," she said, already reaching for his preferred dark roast blend. "One of these nights you'll have to tell me how you managed to arrive at exactly the same minute, even in this weather." A ghost of a smile crossed Ryker's face. 23 years in the Bureau tends to make punctuality permanent, Vesper. His voice carried the quiet authority of someone used to commanding rooms far more dangerous than this remote gas station. The store was empty at this hour, as it usually was. Meridian Gulch wasn't exactly a hub of late-night activity, especially not since the mining company had pulled out 5 years ago. The only sounds were the humming of the refrigeration units and the endless Montana wind. Ryker positioned himself by the window, his chair angled to observe both the entrance and the parking lot. Old habits died hard. Even after 3 years away from the FBI's fugitive task force, he still found himself cataloging details, analyzing patterns, reading the subtle signs most people missed. The headlights appeared first, 3 sets cutting through the snowy night, approaching from the direction of the old mining road. Something about their formation triggered a familiar sensation in Ryker's mind, the same instinct that had kept him alive through countless operations. "Vesper," he called quietly, his tone making it clear this wasn't casual conversation. "When was the last time you had 3 vehicles stop here this late?" Before she could answer, the vehicles pulled into the lot, a black SUV flanked by 2 older pickup trucks. The positioning wasn't random. They were blocking potential escape routes, creating a controlled zone. Ryker had seen this pattern before, but usually from the other side of the law. 6 figures emerged, moving with the practiced coordination of people who had done this before. Their leader, tall and lean in a dark jacket, carried himself with the confidence of someone used to taking what he wanted. The others spread out automatically, covering angles, watching backgrounds. "Well, look what we have here," Vesper muttered, reaching slowly under the counter where Ryker knew she kept her old revolver. "Trouble doesn't usually walk in wearing matching jackets." "Don't," Ryker advised softly. "They've done this before. They'll be watching for standard defensive moves." His mind was already racing, analyzing options, cataloging details. The leader's stance suggested military training, but the younger ones moved with the undisciplined energy of amateur criminals. The bell above the door chimed as the first 2 entered. Up close, their apparent leader looked even more interesting. A series of tattoos visible above his collar told a story of prison time, likely Deer Lodge State Penitentiary based on the style. Ryker had sent enough people there to recognize the artwork. "Evening," the leader announced, voice carrying the artificial friendliness of a predator sizing up prey. "Nasty night to be out." His eyes swept the store, cataloging exits, lingering momentarily on Ryker before dismissing him. Exactly as expected. "Can I help you boys find something?" Vesper's voice remained steady, but Ryker could hear the tension beneath it. The leader, whom Ryker mentally tagged as Talon based on the prominent bird tattoo on his neck, smiled without warmth. "Oh, I'm sure you can, ma'am. Question is, how helpful do you want to be?" Outside, the other men had taken up positions. Their pattern was professional, but their execution showed gaps, the kind of mistakes that separated experienced criminals from truly dangerous ones. More importantly, they had made the same critical error that had brought down countless criminals during Ryker's career. They had already decided who in the room they needed to worry about. Little did they know, they were about to learn the same lesson that had cost so many others their freedom. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should fear the most. The fluorescent lights of Tannhauser's Outpost and fuel cast harsh shadows across Talon Maddox's face as he moved deeper into the store, his practiced swagger masking the predatory calculation beneath. Behind him, Cypher kept one hand inside his jacket, a telegraphed threat that made Ryker mentally note his amateur status despite their professional setup. "Quiet night," Talon observed, running his fingers along a shelf of snack foods. "Must get lonely out here, just you and your thoughts." His eyes flickered to Ryker's wheelchair again, dismissing him for the second time. "And your regulars, of course." Ryker remained still, his posture unchanged, but his mind was already 3 steps ahead. 23 years of hunting America's most dangerous fugitives had taught him to read people like books, and these men were writing their stories in bold print. The way Echo, the youngest, kept glancing at the security cameras, how Cypher's breathing quickened when headlights passed on the distant highway. Most tellingly, how Talon's accent slipped when he mentioned regulars, a practiced criminal dropping character for just a moment. 4 hours earlier, in Ryker's modified ranch house on the outskirts of Meridian Gulch, he had been reviewing old case files, a habit he'd maintained since leaving the bureau. Dr. Lysander Kestris, during his weekly checkup, had suggested finding a new hobby. "The mind needs rest as much as the body, Kit," he'd said, examining the surgical scars from the raid that had changed everything. The raid, 3 years ago, but the memories remained razor-sharp. A warehouse in Seattle, his team closing in on one of the most notorious drug trafficking operations on the West Coast. Everything had gone according to plan until that final moment. The hidden shooter, the choice between protecting his team or protecting himself. In the end, it hadn't been a choice at all. Vesper's voice brought him back to the present. "We don't get many visitors this late, especially not so organized." Talon's laugh carried no humor. "Maybe we're just passing through. Maybe we're looking for something specific." He moved behind the counter, invading Vesper's space with calculated intimidation, like whatever's in that safe under the register. Outside, the wind howled louder, drowning out the sound of approaching vehicles. Vehicles Ryker had noticed in his peripheral vision, their headlights off, moving with the kind of stealth that suggested either law enforcement or more criminals. The situation was becoming more complex by the minute. "Safes on a time lock," Vesper lied smoothly, a response that made Ryker's eyebrow raise slightly. In the 2 years he'd been coming here, he'd learned that Vesper Tannhauser was more than just a gas station owner. The way she carried herself, how she monitored her surroundings, she had training of her own, though she'd never mentioned it. Talon's facade cracked slightly. "Now that's interesting, because our information says otherwise." He gestured to Cypher, who moved to the store's back office. "Very specific information about very specific deliveries that pass through here." And there it was, the real purpose behind this robbery. Ryker had suspected Tannhauser's Outpost wasn't just a remote gas station. Its location, the pattern of late-night deliveries, Vesper's occasional coded phone conversations when she thought no one was listening. This wasn't a random target. It was a calculated hit on what was likely a front for something much larger. "Should have done better research." Ryker spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had once commanded FBI tactical teams. "You missed some crucial details." All eyes turned to him, really seeing him for the first time. Talon's expression shifted from dismissal to irritation. "Something to contribute, old-timer?" "Just an observation," Ryker continued, his hands relaxed on his wheelchair's arms. "Your driver kept the engine running. Standard procedure for a quick exit, but he's facing south into the wind. In this weather, that's going to ice up his windshield in about..." He checked his watch. 3 more minutes. Rookie mistake. The atmosphere in the store changed instantly. Talon's casual menace hardened into something more dangerous. Seems like the old-timer's been paying attention, boys. Maybe too much attention. Echo, still by the door, shifted nervously. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Taz, we should hurry this up. Something's not right. He was right to be nervous. What none of them had noticed yet was how Ryker had positioned his chair at precisely the right angle to monitor both the store's entrance and its security monitor's reflection in the window. He'd seen what they hadn't: the dark shapes moving through the snow, approaching from the direction opposite their lookout's focus. You know what I hate? Talon moved closer to Ryker, attempting to loom over him. People who don't mind their own business, people who think watching a few cop shows makes them experts. He reached out to grab Ryker's wheelchair arm. People who don't understand their limitations. In that moment, several things happened simultaneously. Talon's hand made contact with the wheelchair, giving Ryker the justification he'd been waiting for. Echo spotted the approaching figures in the parking lot and opened his mouth to shout a warning. And through the store's back door came the distinctive sound of Cypher discovering exactly why the office's security system had looked familiar to Ryker. He'd designed similar ones for FBI safe houses. Speaking of limitations, Ryker's voice remained calm as he smoothly activated the wheelchair's hidden modifications. Let's discuss yours. The next few seconds would demonstrate exactly why Kierith Ryker had been considered one of the Bureau's most effective tactical commanders, wheelchair or not. Sometimes the greatest strength lies not in what people see, but in what they fail to notice until it's too late. What happened next would be discussed in Meridian Gulch for years to come, though few would get the details right. The official report would mention a disabled former FBI agent thwarting a robbery, but it wouldn't capture the fluid precision of how Ryker's wheelchair suddenly transformed from a perceived weakness into a tactical advantage. As Talon's hand gripped the wheelchair's arm, Ryker activated the first of his chair's modifications, a feature that would have raised eyebrows at the Bureau if they'd known about it during his active duty. The armrest detached with practiced ease, throwing Talon off balance. In the same smooth motion, Ryker used his upper body strength, maintained through rigorous daily training, to execute a modified takedown technique he'd developed during his rehabilitation. First rule of tactical assessment, Ryker's voice remained calm as Talon crashed to the floor. Never assume physical limitations equal tactical disadvantage. Echo's warning shout came too late. Through the store's windows, multiple figures emerged from the swirling snow, their movements suggesting professional training. But something about their approach made Ryker's instincts flare. They weren't moving like law enforcement. Cypher burst from the back office, his face pale. Taz, the office, it's got some kind of... His words cut off as the security system Ryker had recognized activated its secondary features. Metal shutters slammed down over the windows and doors, sealing everyone inside. That would be the containment protocol, Ryker explained, smoothly repositioning his chair to cover both Talon and the main entrance. Originally designed for FBI safe houses. Amazing what you can repurpose with the right knowledge. Vesper moved with sudden efficiency, producing a very non-standard issue weapon from beneath the counter. Her stance confirmed Ryker's earlier suspicions about her training. Should have known you'd have something to do with my security upgrade kit. Talon, still on the floor, began laughing, a sound devoid of humor. Oh, this is perfect. Absolutely perfect. He turned his head to look at Ryker. Let me guess. Kierith Ryker, former FBI Tactical Command? The same Kierith Ryker who led the Seattle raid 3 years ago? The pieces clicked into place in Ryker's mind. The warehouse operation. You weren't just targeting this station because it's isolated. You were sent here. His eyes narrowed. Who's pulling your strings, Talon? Or should I say former Staff Sergeant Marcus Talon Maddox, dishonorable discharge known associate of the West Coast Coalition. The atmosphere in the store shifted again as layers of deception peeled away. Echo, the youngest of the crew, looked increasingly uncertain. Taz, what's he talking about? You said this was a simple hit. Outside, the dark figures had reached the building's perimeter. Their movements confirmed Ryker's suspicion. These weren't law enforcement officers coming to the rescue. This was another team, and their arrival suggested something much bigger than a simple gas station robbery. Interesting timing, Ryker observed, his tactical mind analyzing the situation. A second team arriving just as you breached the office, almost like they were waiting to see if you could access something specific. He turned slightly to Vesper. Want to tell me what's really passing through this station, Ms. Tannhauser? Or should I use your other name? Vesper's expression remained neutral, but her grip on the weapon tightened slightly. Not everyone who left the agency did it by choice, Kit. Some of us found other ways to serve. The pieces were falling into place faster now. Tannhauser's outpost wasn't just a front. It was a waypoint for something important enough to draw out multiple teams of professional operators. The question was, what exactly had Ryker stumbled into during his nightly routine? A new sound cut through the howling wind. Helicopter rotors in the distance. Talon's smile widened. Sounds like the cleanup crew's right on schedule. Hope your security system can handle multiple breach points, old man. Second rule of tactical assessment, Ryker replied, activating another of his chair's modifications as lights began to flicker throughout the store. Always have contingency plans. Cypher, who had been edging toward the front door, suddenly stopped. The locks, they're cycling. What did you do? More interesting question, Ryker countered, is why your backup team triggered the secondary protocol. Only certain radio frequencies would cause that response, frequencies used by very specific government agencies. He looked at Vesper. We're not just talking about normal contraband, are we? This is about Project Helios. The name landed like a bombshell in the room. Echo actually stepped back in shock. Even Talon's confident expression wavered slightly. Project Helios, a classified operation that had gone spectacularly wrong 2 years ago, leading to multiple agency investigations and several mysterious disappearances. How do you... Vesper started, but Ryker cut her off. Because I was supposed to lead the team that shut it down, he revealed, before the Seattle raid changed everything. But someone wanted me out of the way. Someone who knew what was really happening with Helios. His eyes locked onto Talon. Someone who arranged for a random shooter to be waiting in that warehouse. The helicopter sounds grew closer as tension in the store reached a breaking point. Outside, the second team had begun setting up breach positions, unaware that they were playing right into a trap 3 years in the making. Because while everyone had assumed Kierith Ryker had quietly accepted his retirement, he had actually been setting up an elaborate operation of his own. You know what your real mistake was? Ryker asked, as emergency lights bathed the store in a red glow. Assuming I chose this gas station for my nightly routine by accident. A small smile crossed his face. Third rule of tactical assessment. There are no coincidences in an operation this big. The stage was set for what would become one of the most talked about operations in FBI history, all starting with a supposedly routine robbery at a remote Montana gas station. Sometimes the most effective trap is the one where everyone thinks they're the hunter, only to discover too late that they're the prey. The emergency lighting cast crimson shadows across Tannhauser's outpost as the situation continued to evolve. The helicopter's rotor wash now buffeted the building's metal shutters, creating an ominous rhythmic drumming that underscored the tension inside. But Kierith Ryker's attention was focused on something else, the subtle changes in the room's dynamics as each person processed the revelations about Project Helios. You're bluffing, Talon said, but his voice lacked its previous confidence. Helios was completely compartmentalized. Nobody outside the inner circle knew the full scope. Except for the team assigned to investigate the irregularities, Ryker countered, smoothly adjusting his chair's position to maintain tactical advantage. Tell me, Talon, did they explain why they needed an expert marksman in that Seattle warehouse? Or were you just following orders like you did in Damascus? The reference to Damascus made Talon's face go white. Echo, still by the door, looked between them with growing uncertainty. Taz, what's he talking about? What was in Damascus? Nothing that concerns you, kid, Talon snapped, but Ryker could see the cracks forming in his facade. Actually, it concerns everyone in this room, Ryker continued. his voice carrying the authority that had once commanded FBI tactical teams. Damascus was where Project Helios first went off the rails, where certain elements within the agency decided to repurpose classified technology for private interests. Isn't that right, Ms. Tannhauser? Vesper's professional demeanor wavered slightly. You don't understand what was at stake, Kit. What's still at stake? The sound of boots on the roof added another layer of tension to the scenario. The second team was positioning for a breach, exactly as Ryker had anticipated. He'd chosen this location for his routine visits precisely because of its tactical advantages. Advantages that were about to become very relevant. Here's what I understand, Ryker said, activating another of his chair's hidden features, a small display screen embedded in the armrest. 3 years ago, someone wanted me off the Helios investigation badly enough to arrange an accident in Seattle. 2 years ago, this gas station suddenly changed ownership, right after 3 key witnesses in the Helios investigation disappeared. He looked at Talon. And now here you are, supposedly attempting a simple robbery, just when a major Helios asset is scheduled for transport. Cypher, who had been monitoring the windows, suddenly spoke up. We've got movement on the west side. They're setting up cutting equipment. Of course they are, Ryker replied calmly. Standard breach procedure for a building with this type of security. What they don't realize is that every piece of equipment they're using is sending data back to a very interested party at the FBI's cyber division. This was apparently news to Vesper. You contacted the Bureau? After everything they did? No. Ryker's smile held no warmth. I contacted Chief Soren Kadir of the Meridian Gulch Sheriff's Department, former FBI cybercrime specialist who, coincidentally, was also investigating Helios before being suddenly reassigned to this quiet little town. The pieces were falling into place, and Talon clearly didn't like the picture they were forming. You planned this, he accused. This whole setup, your nightly routine, the security system, even getting yourself assigned to this backwater after Seattle. You were laying a trap. Fourth rule of tactical assessment, Ryker responded. Sometimes the best way to catch your target is to let them think they're the ones setting the trap. He gestured to the security monitors. Right now, every frequency being used by your backup team is being tracked and recorded. Every piece of equipment they're using is compromised. And most importantly, every person involved in this operation is being identified and logged. Echo's nervous energy had reached a breaking point. This is insane. We need to get out of here before the real FBI team arrives? Ryker finished for him. The one that's been waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity to expose the corruption within Project Helios? They're already here. As if on cue, new sounds emerged from outside. The distinctive engine notes of multiple vehicles approaching at high speed. The helicopter's rhythm changed as its pilot presumably spotted the newcomers. You see, Ryker continued, while everyone was watching the disabled former agent quietly visiting a remote gas station, nobody noticed the extensive surveillance network being built around this waypoint. Nobody questioned why certain high-level FBI investigators were suddenly transferred to seemingly random positions in a small Montana town. And most importantly, nobody realized that the Seattle raid wasn't the end of my investigation. It was just the beginning. Vesper's professional mask finally cracked completely. The whole station is wired, isn't it? Not just for security, but for intelligence gathering. Every delivery, every coded conversation. Every meeting between supposedly retired agents and their handlers, Ryker confirmed. Project Helios didn't just go rogue, Ms. Tannhauser. It became a conduit for something much darker. The question is, are you still working for the original program or for the people who corrupted it? The tension in the room shifted again as this new revelation landed. Outside, the sounds of the approaching vehicles grew louder, and the helicopter's engine note changed. They were powering up for potential escape. They won't make it, Ryker noted calmly. The FBI's tactical air unit has been on standby since your team triggered the first security protocol. Another coincidence of being in a remote area. Excellent sightlines for aerial surveillance. Talon's calculating mind was clearly racing, reassessing the situation. Even if you're right, even if you've managed to set all this up, you're still trapped in here with us, and you're still in that chair. Fifth rule of tactical assessment, Ryker replied, as hidden panels in the store's ceiling began to open, revealing sophisticated surveillance equipment. Never assume you know all of your opponent's capabilities, especially when they've had 3 years to prepare for this exact moment. The stage was set for what would become one of the most significant operations in FBI history. Not just the exposure of corruption within Project Helios, but the vindication of a man everyone had underestimated. Sometimes the most effective operative isn't the one with the most physical capabilities, but the one with the patience to set up the perfect plan and the wisdom to let their opponents walk right into it. The relative calm inside Tannhauser's outpost was shattered by the sound of breaking glass from the back office. Cypher, who had been edging toward that direction, suddenly dropped to the ground as a canister rolled into view, releasing a thick white smoke. "Breach teams making their move," Ryker announced calmly, though his mind was racing through tactical scenarios. Something wasn't right about the timing. The FBI team shouldn't have moved in yet, not before. "That's not the FBI." Vesper's voice carried a note of genuine fear that made Ryker reassess the situation instantly. "Those are Helios cleaners. They're not here to arrest anyone." The implications hit just as the store's power grid completely failed, plunging everything into darkness before the emergency lights kicked in. This wasn't part of Ryker's carefully orchestrated plan. Someone had managed to override even his backup systems. "Dr. Kestris," Ryker said suddenly, the pieces clicking into place. "My weekly checkups. He wasn't just monitoring my recovery, was he, Vesper? He was monitoring my movements, my plans." Vesper's silence was confirmation enough. The trusted physician who had helped Ryker adapt to life in the wheelchair had been reporting on him the entire time. But to whom? The smoke was spreading rapidly, and with it came a sound that made Ryker's blood run cold. The distinctive high-pitched whine of military-grade sonic disruptors, equipment that shouldn't exist outside of classified research facilities. "Everyone down," he commanded, his tactical training taking over. "Cover your ears and open your mouths." Even as he spoke, he was activating one final modification to his wheelchair, one he'd hoped never to need. Talon, surprisingly, moved to help Echo take cover. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he muttered. "The job was simple. Get in, secure the package, make it look like a robbery gone wrong." "Plans change," came a new voice from the smoke, and Dr. Lysander Kestris emerged wearing full tactical gear, his kindly physician's demeanor replaced by cold efficiency, especially when certain retired agents can't stop digging into things that don't concern them. Ryker's mind flashed back to every medical examination, every seemingly casual conversation about his recovery. "You were there that day in Seattle, weren't you? Not just monitoring the operation, but making sure it went exactly as planned." "You were getting too close," Kestris confirmed, his voice devoid of its usual warmth. Project Helios had too much potential to be shut down by bureaucrats and moralists. The technology we developed could change everything: warfare, law enforcement, political power itself. The sonic disruptor's whine increased, and Ryker could feel the vibrations beginning to affect his inner ear, but his wheelchair's dampening system, designed for exactly this scenario, was keeping him functional. "Vesper wasn't just running a waypoint," he said, pieces of the puzzle finally fitting together. "This station is a testing ground. You're field testing Helios tech on civilian targets." Kestris smiled, a cold expression that transformed his entire face. "Very good, Kit. Always the analyst, even now. Yes, we've been using this location to observe how different subjects react to various Helios protocols. The truckers who stop here, the locals, even your own recovery process, all valuable data points." Outside, the sounds of conflict had erupted as multiple teams engaged each other. The FBI squad Ryker had carefully positioned was now fighting against both the cleanup team and local law enforcement. But something about the pattern of gunfire suggested yet another player had entered the game. "Chief Kadir," Ryker called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. "I'm guessing he's not really on our side either." "Kadir was useful," Kestris confirmed, "but ultimately expendable. Just like you were supposed to be. Instead, you turned your disability into an advantage, used our own assumptions against us. Impressive, but ultimately futile." The smoke was getting thicker, and Ryker could see Talon and his crew struggling to stay conscious. Even Vesper, with all her training, was showing signs of the sonic attack's effects. Only Ryker, protected by his chair's countermeasures, remained fully alert. "You made one critical mistake," Ryker said, his hands moving subtly over his chair's hidden controls. "You assumed I trusted anyone in this operation completely. Even Kadir only got the information I wanted him to have." A new sound cut through the chaos. Distant sirens, but not local law enforcement. These had a different pitch, one that made Kestras's confident expression falter slightly. "Homeland Security," Ryker explained, allowing himself a small smile. "The real investigation team. Everything else, the FBI squad, the local police, even my seemingly predictable routine, was just theater to draw out the real players." Kestras's face contorted with rage. "You couldn't just stay retired, could you? Couldn't just accept your role as the broken agent who faded away quietly? Do you have any idea what Helios could achieve? The power we could wield?" "Sixth rule of tactical assessment," Ryker replied, activating his chair's final countermeasure. "Power isn't about what you can do to others. It's about what you're willing to risk to stop others from abusing it." The hidden panels in his wheelchair burst open, releasing a counteragent to the smoke that was already beginning to clear the air. But more importantly, they revealed sophisticated recording equipment that had been documenting everything since the moment the robbery began. Every word, every confession, every detail about Helios, Ryker stated firmly. All transmitted in real time to secure servers that just gave Homeland Security everything they need to shut down not just the project, but everyone involved in corrupting it. The distant sirens were getting closer, and through the thinning smoke, Ryker could see real fear in Kestras's eyes. The doctor raised his weapon, desperation replacing his cold efficiency. "Even if you kill everyone in this room," Ryker continued calmly, "it's too late. The truth about Helios is already out. The only question remaining is whether you'll face justice or whether you'll add murder to the charges. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from physical confrontation, but from the careful manipulation of truth and deception." As the Homeland Security teams approached and the full scope of Project Helios's corruption came to light, one thing became clear: never underestimate a man who has nothing left to lose but his integrity. The world exploded into chaos as multiple breaching charges detonated simultaneously around Tannhauser's Outpost. The carefully maintained balance of power shattered as specialized teams from 3 different agencies converged on the building. But Dr. Lysander Kestras had one final card to play, one that would test Kierith Ryker's resolve to its absolute limit. "You think you've won?" Kestras's laugh held an edge of madness as he pulled out a small device. Helios wasn't just about weapons or surveillance, it was about control, complete and absolute. He pressed a sequence of buttons, and suddenly Ryker's wheelchair began to malfunction. "Interesting design modifications you made," Kestras continued, his doctor's knowledge twisted into something cruel. "But did you really think I wasn't monitoring every improvement, every adaptation? I helped design your recovery program, Kit. I know exactly how your systems work." Ryker's hands moved across his controls, but nothing responded. The sophisticated countermeasures he'd developed, the tactical advantages he'd built into his chair, all of them were being systematically disabled by Kestras's device. 7 months of checkups, Kestras said, moving closer. 7 months of watching you try to maintain your dignity, pretending you could still be the legendary agent. And all that time, I was installing backdoors into every system you created. The smoke was clearing now, revealing the full tactical situation. Talon and his crew were unconscious from the sonic attack. Vesper lay slumped behind the counter, her training useless against the sophisticated weapons Helios had developed. Outside, the sounds of combat intensified as multiple teams engaged each other, unaware of the true drama unfolding inside. "You want to know the real irony?" Kestras continued, clearly savoring the moment. "The technology that paralyzed you in Seattle? It was an early Helios prototype. We needed to test its effectiveness on a high-value target. You weren't just removed from the investigation kit. You were part of the experiment. The revelation hit Ryker like a physical blow. Every moment of his recovery, every struggle to adapt to his new reality. It had all been orchestrated. He'd been a lab rat in their twisted experiment, and his trusted physician had been recording data on his suffering. Why? Ryker's voice remained steady, even as he felt his tactical advantage slipping away. Why go to such elaborate lengths? Because you represented everything that could stop Helios, Kestris explained, his professional demeanor completely gone. The incorruptible agent, the tactical genius, the man who couldn't be bought or threatened. We needed to understand how to break someone like you. And now, thanks to your own determination to fight back, we have years of valuable data on how someone adapts to targeted disability. Through the windows, Ryker could see the Homeland Security teams taking positions. His carefully orchestrated plan was still in motion, but without control of his chair, without the tactical advantages he'd built into it, he was genuinely vulnerable for the first time since Seattle. It must be humiliating, Kestris pressed, clearly enjoying his moment of dominance. The great Kierith Ryker, reduced to helplessness again. All your plans, all your modifications, all your attempts to prove you're still relevant, undone by the very person who helped you recover. The distant sirens were getting closer, but Kestris seemed unconcerned. The best part? When this is over, when the smoke clears, everyone will see exactly what we want them to see. A tragic incident where a disabled former agent's paranoid delusions led to multiple deaths. Your evidence will be discredited. Your testimony dismissed as PTSD-induced fantasy. Ryker's mind raced through options, each one more limited than the last. The recording equipment in his chair was offline. The counter-agents he'd prepared were inaccessible. Even the emergency beacon that would have alerted his real backup team was dead. You should have stayed retired, Kestris continued, moving to check on Vesper's unconscious form. Accepted your role as the broken warrior who faded away quietly. Instead, you'll be remembered as the agent who cracked under pressure, who imagined conspiracies where none existed. But something in Kestris's monologue triggered a memory in Ryker's tactical mind, a detail from his years of investigation that suddenly took on new significance. That's why you chose this location, Ryker said slowly, pieces clicking into place. Not just for testing Helios tech, but because of what's underneath it. Kestris paused, something flickering across his face. What are you talking about? The old mining tunnels, Ryker continued, the ones that run right under this station. The real reason Vesper chose this location wasn't just for its isolation. It was for access to the underground network where you could hide the true scope of Helios testing. For the first time, genuine concern showed through Kestris's confident facade. How did you? Eighth rule of tactical assessment, Ryker cut him off. Sometimes the most important intel comes not from what people do, but from what they try too hard to hide. Every time I mentioned the mining history of this area, you changed the subject. Every medical exam, every conversation about local history, you steered away from anything involving the tunnels. The sounds of combat outside were changing pattern, suggesting a new factor had entered the equation. Kestris clearly heard it too, his expression turning calculating. It doesn't matter what you think you know, he said, raising his weapon. In 30 seconds, this whole building will be compromised. Everyone will be too busy with the tactical situation to notice one more casualty. And this time, I'll make sure you don't survive to ask questions. But Ryker allowed himself a small smile, one that made Kestris hesitate. Ninth rule of tactical assessment. Never assume your opponent is playing only one game. The floor beneath them suddenly trembled, but not from the combat above. A deep rumbling emerged from below, and Kestris's eyes widened in genuine fear as he realized what it meant. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from fighting back, but from letting your opponent think they've won, right until the moment they realize they've walked into a trap 3 years in the making. The rumbling from beneath Tannhauser's outpost grew stronger, and Dr. Kestris's confident expression cracked as he realized the full implications of what was happening. The underground network he'd tried so hard to keep secret was about to expose everything. Those aren't just mining tunnels down there, are they? Ryker's voice carried clearly despite the chaos. They're full testing facilities, and right now every subject you've been experimenting on is about to have their chance at revenge. As if to confirm his words, the store's floor began to crack as something powerful impacted it from below. The sonic weapons Kestris had used against them were nothing compared to what Helios had been developing in their underground labs. Impossible, Kestris breathed, genuine fear replacing his earlier arrogance. The subjects are contained. The security protocols were compromised months ago, Ryker finished for him. Did you really think those weekly medical visits were just about monitoring my recovery? Every time you scanned my chair's systems, I was scanning yours right back. The floor buckled again, and this time the impact was accompanied by sounds no human throat should be able to make. Talon, beginning to regain consciousness, dragged himself away from the growing cracks. "What did you do to those people?" he asked Kestris, horror dawning in his eyes. "What kind of experiments were you running down there?" "The kind that would have revolutionized warfare," Kestris snapped, his mask of civility completely gone. "Enhanced soldiers, specialized operatives, capabilities beyond normal human limits. The Seattle operation wasn't just about removing Ryker, it was a field test for our first generation of improvements." The revelation hit Talon hard. "The shooter, the one who took out Ryker's team, that was one of your experiments?" "An early success," Kestris confirmed, edging toward the back office. "But the later subjects showed even more promise, especially once we started combining different enhancements." Another impact shook the building, and this time the floor actually split, revealing glimpses of concrete structures below. The hidden facility beneath the gas station was far more extensive than even Ryker had suspected. "That's why you needed this location," he said, pieces still clicking into place. "Remote enough for secrecy, but with built-in underground infrastructure. The perfect place to hide your testing program." Vesper stirred, consciousness returning as the sonic weapons effects began to fade. "I didn't know," she managed, looking at Kestris with growing horror. "When they recruited me to run this station, they said it was just surveillance, monitoring potential threats." "It started that way," Kestris admitted, his scientist's enthusiasm breaking through his fear. "But the potential was too great to ignore. Every traveler who stopped here, every local who bought gas, they were all potential test subjects. The coffee you served, laced with compounds we were developing. The air itself carried experimental agents. We've been gathering data on human enhancement for years." Echo, the youngest of Talon's crew, had backed himself into a corner. "The headaches, every time we staked out this place." "You were testing on us too?" "Everyone was a test subject," Kestris said proudly. "Even the great Kierith Ryker. Your remarkable recovery, your adaptation to the wheelchair, all carefully monitored and documented. The data we gathered from you alone advanced our understanding of human resilience by years." But Ryker's smile remained steady. "And every bit of data you gathered was transmitted directly to my real investigation team, the one even Homeland Security doesn't know about yet." For the first time, genuine uncertainty crossed Kestris's face. "What are you talking about?" "Did you think I chose this chair design at random?" Ryker asked. "Every modification, every system you so carefully monitored, they were designed to attract your attention, to make you focus on what you expected to see." The rumbling from below intensified, and now voices could be heard. Dozens of them calling out in anger and confusion. The subjects of Helios's underground experiments were rising, drawn by signals Ryker's chair had been secretly broadcasting for months. "You see," Ryker continued, "while you were studying my recovery, I was studying your subjects, learning their patterns, understanding the experiments you were running, and most importantly, finding ways to communicate with them." Talon had managed to reach Echo, helping the younger man stay steady as the floor continued to buckle. "All this time, we thought we were targeting a simple waypoint. But we were actually part of your experiment?" "Everyone was part of it," Kestris snapped, frustration overtaking his fear. "The local police, the truckers, even the FBI teams investigating us, all of them provided valuable data. The effects of our compounds, the potential for enhancement, the limits of human adaptation. This wasn't just about weapons or soldiers. It was about reshaping humanity itself. But his moment of scientific enthusiasm was interrupted by new sounds from outside. Not just sirens or helicopter rotors, but something else. Something that made even Kestras's enhanced hearing struggle to comprehend. That would be the second team, Ryker explained calmly. The one composed of your earlier test subjects, the ones who escaped months ago and have been waiting for exactly this moment. The truth dawned in Kestras's eyes. The missing subjects, the ones we could never locate. You found them? Better than that, Ryker replied. I helped them understand what was done to them, helped them channel their enhancements, control their new abilities, and now they're here to ensure that Helios can never experiment on anyone else. The floor gave one final shudder before literally tearing apart, revealing the complex of underground laboratories and testing chambers. And rising from below came Helios's greatest nightmare, the combined force of its own experiments, turned against their creators. Sometimes resistance doesn't come from fighting the system directly, but from understanding it so completely that you can turn its own weapons against it. As Kestras faced the consequences of his twisted experiments, he finally understood the most important lesson of all. The most dangerous opponent isn't the one who fights back immediately, but the one who waits patiently to strike at the perfect moment. The underground facility beneath Tannhauser's outpost revealed itself like a nightmare made real. Through the shattered floor, stark fluorescent lighting illuminated rows of testing chambers, monitoring stations, and equipment that shouldn't exist outside of science fiction. But it was the subjects themselves that commanded attention. Dozens of people, each bearing visible signs of Helios's experiments. My God, Talon breathed, helping Echo stay steady as more of the floor gave way. How many people did you experiment on down here? Kestras's scientific detachment wavered as he faced the full scope of his work. You don't understand. Each subject was carefully chosen, monitored, the potential benefits to humanity. Save it, came a new voice, deep and resonant in ways that suggested extensive modification. A figure emerged from below, tall, heavily muscled, with skin that seemed to shift colors like adaptive camouflage. We've heard all about the benefits while you tortured us. Ryker recognized him from the files he'd uncovered. Marcus Webb, former Marine Corps scout sniper, reported missing 3 years ago during a training exercise. Webb is dead, the figure replied, his voice carrying harmonic undertones that made nearby glass vibrate. They burned that identity away in their labs. Now I'm just Subject 01, their first success's story. More subjects emerged, each displaying different modifications. Some moved with impossible speed, others showed signs of enhanced strength or sensory capabilities. All of them focused their altered gazes on Kestras with a combination of fear and fury. The achievements we made? Kestras protested, backing toward his equipment. The advancements in human capability. Your sacrifices served a greater purpose. Another subject stepped forward, this one female. Her skin lined with what appeared to be fiber optic circuitry. Like the purpose behind the Seattle operation? Using us to test your weapons on federal agents? Ryker's tactical mind was already analyzing the situation, noting how the subjects moved, how they coordinated without obvious communication. You developed a hive mind capability, he said, the pieces clicking together. That's why my signals were so effective in reaching them. They're networked. Another successful experiment, Webb confirmed, his adaptive skin rippling with emotion. They linked our minds to enhance tactical coordination. Didn't expect us to use that connection to organize resistance. Outside, the sounds of combat had changed character. The Homeland Security teams and Helios's forces were now dealing with something else. Enhanced subjects who had been waiting in the surrounding wilderness, coordinating through their shared neural network. You don't know what you're risking, Kestras said, his voice taking on a desperate edge. The subjects aren't stable. The enhancements have side effects, degradation patterns. You mean we're dying? The female subject cut him off. The improvements you forced on us are burning us out. That's why you needed constant new test subjects, isn't it? To study how we fail? Vesper had managed to stand, her training warring with horror at what she'd unknowingly been part of. The deliveries I handled, the special packages, those weren't just surveillance supplies. Components for the experiments, Ryker confirmed. Chemical compounds, biological agents, specialized equipment, all moving through this station, hidden in plain sight. Talon's professional demeanor had completely cracked. We were supposed to be here to secure evidence of illegal surveillance, not this. That's why they chose you, Ryker explained. Professional thieves used to not asking too many questions, the perfect patsies to take the fall when this facility needed to be cleaned out. The rumbling from below intensified as more subjects emerged. The underground complex was vast, stretching far beyond the gas station's footprint. Years of secret construction, hidden beneath a remote Montana town. You still don't understand what's at stake, Kestrus insisted, reaching for something in his coat. These subjects represent the future of human evolution. The next stage of what? Webb demanded, his voice making the remaining windows vibrate. Creating disposable soldiers? Living weapons you can use and discard? Not just soldiers, came another voice from the shadows. Dr. Phoenix Rivera emerged from the back office, wearing the same tactical gear as Kestrus. The potential applications go far beyond military use. Imagine workers who never tire, servants who can't disobey, entire populations enhanced for specific purposes. Riker's eyes narrowed. The medical board member who approved my treatment program. You're part of this too. Part of it? Rivera laughed. I helped design it. Who do you think developed the compounds we used in Seattle? The ones that let our enhanced shooter target specific nerve clusters? The revelation hit Ryker hard, but his tactical mind never stopped working. That's why you insisted on being part of my recovery team, not just to monitor me, but to study how your compounds affected human nervous systems long-term. Your paralysis provided invaluable data, Rivera confirmed, moving to stand beside Kestrus. The way your body adapted, how the damage patterns developed, it helped us refine our targeting capabilities significantly. The enhanced subjects reacted to this news with visible anger, their various modifications becoming more pronounced. Webb's skin shifted through combat patterns while others displayed signs of increasing aggression. You see the problem? Kestrus asked, his hand closing around something in his pocket. These subjects are unstable, emotional. They need to be controlled. No, Ryker countered. They need justice, which is exactly what they're about to get. But Rivera's smile suggested confidence rather than concern. Justice? Did you think we'd run a facility this sensitive without a failsafe? She held up a device similar to the one that had disabled Riker's chair. The neural network linking the subjects? It has a kill switch. One signal and their enhanced nervous systems shut down completely. The stakes suddenly escalated beyond anything Ryker had anticipated. The subject's shared consciousness meant shared vulnerability. One command could effectively execute dozens of people simultaneously. That's why you let them organize, he realized. The neural network wasn't just for tactical coordination. It was a control mechanism. Precisely, Kestrus confirmed. And now you have a choice, Agent Ryker. Stand down and let us leave with our research, or watch as we terminate every enhanced subject in a half-mile radius. Sometimes the ultimate challenge isn't about physical confrontation, but about impossible choices. As Ryker faced the true architects of Project Helios, he realized that the real test wasn't about stopping their escape. It was about saving lives they saw as merely experimental data. The tension in the shattered remains of Tannhauser's outpost had reached a critical point. Enhanced subjects surrounded Kestrus and Rivera, their modified bodies displaying varying signs of barely contained rage, while the kill switch hung between them like a digital sword of Damocles. Your move, Agent Ryker, Rivera taunted, her finger hovering over the device. How many lives are you willing to sacrifice for your investigation? How many subjects are you prepared to lose? But Riker's expression remained calm, almost contemplative. 10th rule of tactical assessment. When an opponent is too confident about their failsafe, it usually means they haven't considered all the angles. Something in his tone made Kestris pause. What are you talking about? Did you ever wonder why I chose this specific wheelchair design? Ryker asked, his hands moving across controls that had seemed disabled. Why I let you monitor systems that seemed so obviously modified? Webb, the enhanced subject designated as 01, suddenly straightened. Through the neural network linking the subjects, something was changing. A new signal, subtle but growing stronger. You see, Ryker continued, while you were studying my adaptations to paralysis, I was studying something far more interesting, the frequency patterns of your neural control network. Rivera's confident smile faltered slightly. The network is secured. The frequencies are based on the same technology you used in Seattle, Ryker finished for her. The same delivery system that your enhanced shooter used to target my nervous system. Did you really think I wouldn't recognize the signature? The realization hit Kestris first. The chair, all those modifications we monitored, were decoys, Ryker confirmed. The real system was buried much deeper, designed specifically to interface with your neural network. For the past 3 months, I've been broadcasting a counter signal through every subject you've experimented on. Webb's enhanced voice carried new harmonics as he spoke. The headaches, the increasing awareness. You were helping us build resistance to their control. More than that, Ryker said. I was helping your shared consciousness develop its own defenses. Every time they tested their control system, you were learning to fight it. Outside, the sounds of combat shifted again. The enhanced subjects who had been surrounding the facility began moving with new purpose, their actions more coordinated than ever. But this time, the coordination wasn't coming from Helios's control system. Impossible, Rivera snapped, pressing the kill switch's activation button. The failsafe is hardwired into their neural modifications. But nothing happened. The subjects remained standing, their various enhancements now displaying patterns that suggested something very different from Helios's intended control. You want to know the real irony? Ryker asked, allowing himself a small smile. If you hadn't been so focused on studying my recovery, you might have noticed what I was actually doing during those medical examinations. Every time you scanned my systems, I was introducing new variables into your network. Talon, who had been watching the exchange with growing understanding, spoke up. The routine. Your nightly visits to the station. You were broadcasting to them the whole time? Building their resistance bit by bit, Ryker confirmed. Helping their shared consciousness develop natural defenses against external control. The same way my own nervous system had to adapt and find new pathways after Seattle. Kestris's scientific mind was racing, reassessing everything they thought they had known about their star subject. All this time, we thought we were studying your adaptation to disability. When actually, I was using what I learned from that adaptation to help others fight your control. Ryker finished. The human nervous system is remarkably adaptable, something you proved with your own experiments. I just helped your subjects use that adaptability to free themselves. The enhanced subjects were moving now, their formations taking on new patterns. Through their shared consciousness, decades of military and tactical experience were being combined and coordinated in ways Helios had never intended. You don't understand what you've done, Rivera warned, real fear creeping into her voice. These subjects weren't just enhanced physically. Their psychological profiles, their emotional stability, were damaged by your experiments, Webb cut her off. But shared consciousness works both ways. We don't just share tactical knowledge, we share healing, understanding, the ability to process trauma together. The remaining windows of the station vibrated as more enhanced subjects emerged from hiding places throughout the area. Helios's cleanup team found themselves surrounded by the very weapons they had created, now turned against them. Last chance, Ryker announced calmly. Surrender to Homeland Security, or face the consequences of your own experiments. But Kestris and Rivera shared a look that suggested they had one more card to play. You think you've won? Kestris asked, reaching for another device. Did you really think the kill switch was our only failsafe? These subjects represent billions in research, decades of advancement. We're not going to lose everything because one crippled agent got lucky. That's your final mistake, Ryker replied, his chair's systems coming fully online as hidden modifications revealed themselves. You're still thinking of me as the crippled agent, the broken investigator who couldn't let go of a case. The floor trembled as the enhanced subjects moved into final position. Through their shared consciousness, a plan was forming, one that combined their various abilities in ways the Helios scientists had never imagined possible. Want to know what I really am? Ryker asked, as his chair's true capabilities became apparent. I'm the man who spent 3 years studying your every move, learning your every weakness, and turning your own arrogance against you. Sometimes the most crucial preparations aren't about gathering weapons or building defenses. They're about understanding your opponent so completely that their greatest strengths become their ultimate vulnerabilities. As Helios's architects faced the full consequences of their experiments, they finally realized their critical error. They had been so focused on controlling their subjects that they never considered what would happen when those subjects learned to control themselves. Dr. Rivera's hand moved with practiced efficiency as she activated something on her tactical vest. Throughout the underground facility, red warning lights began to pulse. Contingency Protocol Omega, she announced, her voice carrying both triumph and desperation. Complete facility sterilization. The enhanced subjects reacted immediately, their shared consciousness registering the threat. Webb's adaptive camouflage flickered through warning patterns as he processed the implications. They're triggering the facility's self-destruct sequence. Not just self-destruct, Kestris added, his scientific detachment giving way to a kind of manic glee. The containment protocols include a specialized nerve agent, designed specifically to target enhanced neural systems. If we can't control our subjects, no one will. Ryker's tactical mind was already calculating blast radius, potential casualties, evacuation routes. The gas station's location, he realized. It's not just about access to the underground facility. The prevailing winds would carry any released agents directly toward Meridian Gulch. A town of 10,000 people, Rivera confirmed, all of them exposed to low-level Helios compounds through the station's operations. All of them potential test subjects for our final experiment. Talon, who had been helping Echo toward the exit, stopped cold. The whole town? All this time you've been preparing the civilian population for enhanced modification, Kestris finished. The gas station was just the delivery system. Every customer, every passerby, all of them unknowingly participating in the largest human enhancement trial in history. Through the neural network, the enhanced subjects shared a wave of horror as they realized the full scope of Helios's plans. Their shared consciousness, designed for tactical coordination, now carried the weight of 10,000 potential victims. You have 3 minutes, Rivera announced, checking her equipment. The nerve agent will be released through the underground ventilation system, designed to spread maximum dispersal. Anyone with Helios modifications will experience complete neural collapse. And thanks to our years of preparation, that includes every resident of Meridian Gulch. Ryker's hands moved across his chair's controls, accessing systems that had remained truly hidden. That's why you chose this location. Not just for the mining tunnels, but for the town's geography, the valley layout, the wind patterns. It's the perfect testing ground for weaponized agents. The potential data from a full-town neural event. Kestris's scientific enthusiasm broke through again. It's worth any individual losses. Imagine Agent Ryker, the first documented mass enhancement event in human history. But something in Ryker's calm demeanor should have warned them. You really should have studied those mining tunnels more carefully, he said, activating a sequence that made his chair's display light up with new information. Especially their connection to the town's old civil defense system. Webb's enhanced senses picked up something first, a deep rumbling, different from before. The ventilation system. It's reversing? Amazing what you can do with old Cold War infrastructure, Ryker commented. Did you know Meridian Gulch was designated as a potential fallout shelter site in the 1960s? The entire valley is honeycombed with emergency ventilation systems I've spent 3 years mapping and modifying. Realization dawned in Kestras's eyes. The maintenance crews, the construction projects, all part of a larger plan, Ryker confirmed. While you were focused on your underground facility, I was preparing the entire valley. Every vent, every air shaft, every potential dispersal point, all of them ready to be reversed at a moment's notice. The warning lights shifted color as emergency systems engaged. Throughout the facility, the sound of powerful fans spinning up echoed through the tunnels. The enhanced subjects moved with new purpose, their shared consciousness now understanding their role in what was about to happen. It won't be enough, Rivera warned, genuine fear creeping into her voice. The nerve agent is specifically designed for enhanced neural systems. Your ventilation tricks can't stop it. No, Ryker agreed, but they can redirect it. Tell me, doctors, did you ever wonder why I insisted on testing my chair's systems every night at exactly the same time? Why I always positioned myself in specific spots around the station? The pieces clicked into place too late. While they had been studying his recovery, monitoring his chair's obvious modifications, Ryker had been systematically preparing the entire valley for this moment. The civil defense system isn't just ventilation, he explained. It's a complete atmospheric control network. And for the past 3 years, I've been using my chair to introduce specialized compounds into that network. Compounds designed to neutralize your nerve agent. Talon, his professional assessment skills kicking in, spotted something through the broken windows. The fog, it's changing color. Indeed, the normal Montana mist was taking on a subtle blue tinge as Ryker's countermeasures activated throughout the valley. The enhanced subjects, through their shared consciousness, could sense the chemical changes in the air. Impossible, Kestris breathed. You couldn't have predicted our exact agent. I didn't have to, Ryker replied. I just had to understand your research patterns. Every experiment you ran, every modification you tested, they all followed predictable chemical frameworks. Frameworks I've had 3 years to study and counter. The facility's warning systems shifted again as multiple containment failures registered throughout the complex. The nerve agent, instead of dispersing toward the town, was being redirected and neutralized by Ryker's valley-wide countermeasure system. All those nights at the station, Vesper said slowly, understanding dawning. The exact timing, the specific locations, were calculated to build up protective compounds throughout the valley's air supply, Ryker confirmed. Sometimes the best defense isn't stopping an attack, it's making sure it has nowhere effective to land. Rivera's scientific mind was racing, recalculating possibilities. Even if you neutralize the nerve agent, the facility's self-destruct is the least of your concerns. Ryker cut her off as new sounds emerged from the depths of the facility. Because while you were focused on your failsafes, you never asked the most important question. What were your enhanced subjects doing with all that shared consciousness and free time? The floor trembled as something massive approached from the lower levels. Something that represented the combined innovation of dozens of enhanced minds working together through their shared neural network. Sometimes the most effective sabotage isn't about destroying your enemy's plans. It's about being so prepared for them that their own weapons become meaningless. As Helios's architects faced the full scope of Ryker's countermeasures, they finally understood their greatest miscalculation. They had been so focused on controlling their subjects that they never considered what those subjects might create once they were truly free. The underground facility shook as something massive emerged from its depths. Through the shattered floor of Tannhauser's outpost, a sight emerged that made even the hardened scientists of Project Helios step back in shock. What rose from below was neither weapon nor vehicle in any conventional sense. It was a perfect fusion of enhanced human capability and collective innovation. Meet Unity, Webb announced, his adaptive camouflage reflecting the blue-tinged mist now filling the valley. What happens when you give enhanced minds the freedom to create instead of destroy? The construct before them defied easy description. It combined elements of organic technology with modifications clearly derived from Helios's own research. Dozens of enhanced subjects had interfaced with it, their shared consciousness now operating as a single, powerful entity. Fascinating, Kestris breathed, scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his fear. You've developed a biological quantum computer, the neural network. You've evolved it far beyond our original design. Beyond your control, you mean, Ryker corrected, his chair's systems now fully integrated with the Valley's defense network. While you were studying my recovery, these people were learning, growing, combining their enhanced capabilities in ways you never imagined possible. Rivera's tactical assessment was quicker and far more alarmed. The facility's self-destruct, the nerve agent, they're not just stopping it, they're repurposing it, Webb confirmed. Through Unity, the enhanced subjects were already transforming Helios's weapon into something else entirely. The neural network that had been meant to control them now extended throughout the facility, turning the entire complex into an extension of their shared consciousness. Talon, still supporting Echo, watched in amazement as the blue mist began to take on patterns, visible manifestations of the valley-wide changes Ryker had secretly implemented over 3 years. The whole time, he realized, while everyone thought you were just a disabled agent stuck in his routine. I was preparing the battlefield, Ryker confirmed. Every night at this station, every seemingly random conversation with locals, every coincidental encounter, all of it building toward this moment. The facility's warning system suddenly shifted from red to blue as Unity asserted control over the environmental systems. Throughout the valley, emergency sirens began to sound, not in warning, but in coordination with the enhanced subjects' efforts to protect the town. Do you have any idea what you've done? Kestris demanded, his scientific detachment finally cracking completely. The protocols we put in place, the fail-safes, were based on an incomplete understanding of human potential, Ryker cut him off. You thought enhancement meant control. These people proved it means evolution. Through Unity, the enhanced subjects were now visible as points of light within a larger neural matrix. Their shared consciousness had become something entirely new, not the weapon Helios had intended, but a collective intelligence dedicated to protecting rather than destroying. It's over, Webb announced, his voice carrying harmonics that made the entire facility resonate. The nerve agent has been neutralized, the town is safe, and Project Helios's true nature is about to be exposed to every intelligence agency on the planet. But Rivera wasn't finished. With desperate speed, she reached for one final device, a small quantum encoder that represented Helios's most advanced control technology. You think we didn't plan for this? That we didn't have one last failsafe? The device activated with a high-pitched whine that made every enhanced subject flinch. For a moment, it seemed their shared consciousness might fragment under the assault. But then something unexpected happened. Quantum encoding, Ryker observed calmly, designed to disrupt neural patterns at the subatomic level. Impressive. But did you really think I wouldn't recognize the technology you used in Seattle? Rivera's triumph turned to confusion as her device began to malfunction. What? What are you doing? The same thing I've been doing for 3 years, Ryker replied. Learning from my own neural trauma, adapting, evolving, just like these people have. Through Unity, the enhanced subjects demonstrated exactly what that evolution meant. Their shared consciousness didn't just resist the quantum disruption, it absorbed it, transformed it, and turned it into something new. You see, Ryker continued, while you were studying how my nervous system adapted to paralysis, I was learning something far more important: how human consciousness can evolve beyond physical limitations. The quantum encoder's whine shifted frequency as Unity reprogrammed it at the fundamental level. Throughout the facility, years of Helios research was being transformed, repurposed from tools of control into something entirely different. This is impossible, Kestris protested, watching his life's work change before his eyes. The quantum mechanics alone are based on principles you never fully understood, Webb finished for him. Through Unity, the enhanced subjects were demonstrating capabilities that went far beyond Helios's original designs. Their shared consciousness had become something entirely new, a true evolution of human potential. The blue mist now filled the entire valley, visible patterns showing how Ryker's preparations had turned Meridian Gulch itself into a vast protective system. Every enhanced subject, every unwitting civilian who had been exposed to Helios compounds, all of them were being shielded by the very countermeasures Ryker had spent years putting in place. 3 years, Ryker said quietly, watching as Unity completed its transformation of the facility. 3 years of everyone seeing exactly what they expected to see: a broken agent, stuck in his routine, unable to let go of his last case, never realizing that every predictable movement, every regular pattern, was part of something much larger. The facility's transformation was now complete. What had been a secret testing complex had become something else entirely. A nexus of human potential, where enhanced consciousness could safely explore its true capabilities. So what happens now? Talon asked, watching as Unity continued to evolve before their eyes. Now, Ryker replied, Project Helios becomes exactly what it should have been from the start. Not a weapon or a control system, but a path to genuine human advancement, under the supervision of people who understand the true meaning of enhancement. The enhanced subjects, through Unity, were already beginning this new phase. Their shared consciousness, freed from Helios's constraints, was showing what humanity might achieve when evolution is guided by wisdom rather than weaponized by fear. Sometimes the greatest victories don't come from destroying your enemy's plans, but from transforming them into something better than they ever imagined possible. As the sun rose over Meridian Gulch, painting the protective blue mist in golden light, a new chapter in human evolution began, one based not on control and fear, but on the limitless potential of truly free minds working together. 1 month after the events at Tannhauser's Outpost, Kierith Ryker sat in his usual spot at the transformed facility, now renamed the Unity Research Center. The gas station above had been rebuilt, serving as a reminder of how ordinary appearances can hide extraordinary truths. Vesper Tannhauser, cleared of any willing involvement in Project Helios, still ran the station. But now it served a different purpose, a gathering point for enhanced individuals seeking understanding and community. The coffee she served was no longer laced with experimental compounds, but it still brought people together. Hard to believe it's only been a month, she said, bringing Ryker his usual dark roast. Through the windows, they could see the subtle blue tinge that still colored the valley's air, a permanent reminder of the protective network he had created. Harder to believe how much has changed, Ryker replied, watching as Webb worked with a group of newly identified enhanced individuals in the courtyard below. The former test subjects had become teachers, helping others understand and control their capabilities. Talon and his crew had found a new purpose as well. Their criminal skills had been redirected toward identifying and extracting other Helios test subjects from around the world. Echo, especially, had thrown himself into the work of helping others escape the fate he had nearly suffered. Latest report from Homeland Security, Chief Soren Kadir announced, joining them with a tablet displaying classified documents. After the truth about his role emerged, a deep-cover operative working with Ryker the entire time, he had been promoted to lead the government's new Enhanced Persons Protection Division. How many more sites have they found? Ryker asked, though he already suspected the answer. 12 so far, Kadir confirmed, all using the same basic setup: remote locations, underground facilities, civilian cover operations. But thanks to Unity, we're shutting them down before they can harm anyone else. The quantum neural network that the enhanced subjects had created had evolved far beyond its original scope. Unity now served as both an early warning system and a support network, helping identify and protect enhanced individuals worldwide. And our former colleagues, Ryker inquired, referring to Kestris and Rivera. Singing like birds to avoid maximum security, Kadir replied with satisfaction. Their testimony has exposed corruption throughout multiple agencies. The entire power structure that enabled Project Helios is being dismantled. Outside, the morning sun caught the protective mist, creating rainbow patterns that reflected Unity's active monitoring of the valley. The enhanced subjects had transformed what was meant to be their prison into a sanctuary for human potential. "You knew, didn't you?" Vesper asked suddenly. "Even before Seattle, you suspected something like Helios existed." Ryker nodded slowly. There were patterns, disappearances, unusual equipment requisitions, research grants that didn't quite add up. But I never imagined the full scope until they tried to stop my investigation permanently. "And now?" she pressed. "What happens to all the enhanced individuals, the ones who never asked for these changes?" "We give them what Helios never did," Ryker replied. "Choice, support, community. The chance to use their capabilities for something beyond weapons and control." Through unity, the enhanced subjects had created something unprecedented, a way for modified humans to live openly, safely, and purposefully. The neural network that had been meant to enslave them had become a foundation for genuine human advancement. Dr. Phoenix Rivera's quantum encoder, reprogrammed by Unity, now served as the core of a new medical technology, one that helped people control and direct their enhancements rather than being controlled by them. The very science that had been meant to create weapons was being transformed into tools for healing. "Latest data from the town's medical screening," Kadir reported, pulling up more files. "The low-level exposure most residents experienced. Unity's been helping them too. Not full enhancements, but changes. Improvements in health, cognitive function, natural healing. Evolution," Ryker mused, "but guided by wisdom and choice rather than forced by experimentation." The facility that had once hidden Helios's darkest secrets now stood as a beacon of hope. Enhanced individuals from around the world made their way to Meridian Gulch, seeking understanding and community. The town itself had been transformed, its people knowingly embracing their role in humanity's next steps. Webb approached their table, his adaptive camouflage reflecting the morning light. "New arrivals from Europe," he reported. "More Helios subjects looking for answers. Unity's already helping them stabilize their enhancements." "And the side effects?" Ryker asked, referring to the degradation patterns Kestris had mentioned. "Reversing," Webb confirmed with a smile. "Turns out the problem was never the enhancements themselves. It was the isolation, the fear, the lack of connection. Unity provides what we really needed: understanding, community, purpose." Ryker watched as more enhanced individuals gathered in the courtyard below, their various modifications no longer hidden but displayed with pride and purpose. What had begun as a simple gas station robbery had evolved into something far more significant, a new chapter in human development. "They still don't get it, do they?" Vesper observed, referring to the imprisoned Helios scientists. "They thought enhancement meant control, power over others. They never understood the real potential." "The potential for connection," Ryker agreed. "For evolution guided by compassion rather than competition. For strength that comes from lifting others up rather than holding them down." The morning sun climbed higher over Meridian Gulch, its light playing through the protective mist that symbolized humanity's next great step forward. In the end, the greatest enhancement hadn't been physical or neural. It had been the enhancement of human potential itself, freed from the constraints of fear and control. What had started with a desperate attempt to stop one man from uncovering the truth had become a catalyst for genuine human evolution. And at the center of it all sat Kierith Ryker, the agent everyone had underestimated, proving that true strength never comes from dominating others. It comes from helping them rise to their full potential. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and check them.